Okay, this video is going to be a tutorial on building automated departure and arrival zones using the new pistons added in 1.7. Now, if you saw the little preview video I did, then this design may look a little different from what you saw. This is sort of the finalized version of the design. So basically, the major change is it occurred to me that I didn't really need to use two pistons. I could actually just use one. So I removed one of the pistons, changed its position a little bit, and other than that, I think I shortened this track a little bit. But the basic idea behind this is we have a ramp leading into our departure zone that causes your minecart to come up the ramp, hit a block, and drop directly down, which then kills all the forward momentum so we can control how fast the cart is going. Once it drops down, it'll land on these tracks, which will propel it forward. And when it gets to the end of the tracks, it'll split the difference between a stone pressure plate and a piston embedded in the wall. Then when we jump in, the piston will extend, which will shove the minecart off onto these powered tracks and send us on our way. So the arrival zone is setup looks pretty much identical to the departure zone. The big difference is in the redstone wiring and the fact that we want the piston to activate when we get off of the pressure plate rather than when we get on. So anyway, let's give this a quick test run. So here we are at the arrival zone. Now I can jump out, and as soon as I get out of the way, that piston is fired and sends this cart back to the pest dispenser. So since most of the kind of stuff above ground is pretty much identical, I'm only going to build it once, and then the arrival zone as I do it will follow the exact same pattern as the departure zone. But the first thing we need to do is probably a good idea to go ahead and kind of set up things at the actual area where you jump in the cart first, and then that'll give you the spacing for the remainder of it. But we can go ahead and place a piston facing towards us, towards the track. And then we can, right next to the piston, we can place a stone pressure plate, and then we need to put two track pieces, just like that. Then coming out from the stone pressure plate, we can dig a little 2-block deep trench. And looks like I left a torch in there from some point. And then we can put powered rails in that trench, then extend it up to our traveling line of track right there. So from here we can kind of wire these up, give them some power. And so that is the basic area of our the area where we actually get on the cart. Now we need to build our ramp to kill our momentum. So that's just a very simple little 3-block ramp. And then we can run some tracks down here, and then these tracks would extend off to your pest dispenser. And then after that, we just need to stick a floating block in the air for our cart to hit when it gets to the end of the ramp. So from here, we need to power up the tracks going up the ramp and then to our stone button. So really easy way to do that is if you just dig out the 2 blocks underneath the ramp, you can place a torch under here. That'll power up these tracks. And then we can just place a piece of redstone on the other side, and that'll provide power to these tracks. Okay, so now we can do the wiring of the button itself, and pretty much this is really straightforward. All we're basically doing is running a wire from the stone pressure plate directly to the piston. However, since we are going underground so we can hide all our wiring, we'll need to drop in a couple of inverters. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove that wooden block I had sitting there, and then we'll just place a torch underneath the piston itself. So obviously that torch is turned on currently, and that'll cause our piston to extend. So what we need to do is invert the signal coming from our stone pressure plate, which we can do just by placing a piece of redstone underneath the stone pressure plate, and then a torch on the side like that, and then just run that power up and plug it into the torch we already put there. So that is pretty much done. Now whenever we hop on the pressure plate, that'll cause the piston to extend. That is basically all the wiring for the arrival zone. just like that. Or I'm sorry, for the departure zone. The arrival zone, on the other hand, is a little more complicated. The big difference being that we have 2 detector rails on either side of the tracks, and this will be hooked up to a passenger detection system. If we just had the inverted output going from our stone pressure plate, so we want our piston to activate when we get off of the stone pressure plate, so when it's no longer being pressed. If we just had the output from our stone pressure plate inverted and running directly to the piston, it would activate at any time as it is right now. So we need to add something else to tell it to only activate that piston when we know that there's actually a cart entering the platform. So we can do that using an RS NOR latch and basically building a little passenger detection system. So when a cart comes in, hits this detector rail, that'll let our system know that there is currently a cart in the system, and so we need to start watching out for it and activating our piston. And then the second detector rail will just turn off that system. So that's probably the first thing to build. So we'll go ahead and run a line of redstone out from underneath our button, and then run it all the way in the back here. I'm leaving some room for some additional wiring that we'll do later on. And then just build an RS NOR latch. And move this over 1 block. So the design of RS NOR latch I'm using may look a little different. Same basic idea. The reason I'm using this one in this particular case is because it has the inputs exposed very nicely. So this is one input on the side, and this is the other input on the other side. Other than that, though, it is just a normal RS NOR latch. And then I'm running the other input from our RS NOR latch up to where our second detector rail is, and that will basically just turn on and off our passenger detection system. So the next thing we need to do is we need to run an output from our stone pressure plate. So again, that's fairly simple. We just place some redstone underneath it, and we want to invert this output. So when the passenger is no longer on the stone pressure plate, we activate the output here. So to do that, we can just stick a torch in the line of redstone here, and that'll act as an inverter. So now if we think about what we want to happen, we want to activate our piston when the passenger detection system is active and when the stone pressure plate is no longer being pressed. So that is basically just an AND gate. So what we're going to do is put 3 blocks in a line like this, put a torch on either end, and normally what you would do with an AND gate is just place a torch on the front here. I'm going to modify this a little bit since we're kind of burying our piston underground. We've got an extra torch here. So what we can do instead is just sort of build a modified AND gate where we just, this torch underneath the piston is acting as the third torch of the AND gate. And so we can just do it like that. But it is just essentially sort of a weird looking AND gate. So from here we need to wire up our piston to our AND gate, which we do just by plugging the wire in like that. And then we need to send the output from our RS NOR latch into the other side of the AND gate, which is just that right there. And we are almost done with this. We've got one thing left. So if you've seen any of the other videos, this will already be probably pretty familiar to you. But when we first press this detector rail, that'll immediately activate our system as it's set up currently. Which means since our cart is coming in and has to fall down here and travel over to where the stone pressure plate is, that this piston may get activated before we have time to travel here. So it's a good idea if we delay the input from this detector rail, which turns on our passenger detection system. So we delay the input from that, which gives our cart time to travel up and over to where our stone button is. So that is just some repeaters. And I'm just sort of sticking some in here. It's not, you'll probably want more than, just 1 or 2, but I think I've got 5 here, and that seems like a good number to me. And then I set them all to their longest delay. Pistons are 0.4 seconds each at their longest delay, so total that should be 2 seconds, which should be plenty of time for us to travel over. So at this point, we are basically done, which is good since it's getting dark and I don't have a mod to turn it to daytime again. So that should be basically working at this point. So if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. But I think this system should be pretty straightforward to build. So thanks a lot for watching.